Greetings to all our precious viewers and welcome to Choices. We value you. It's always a joy when we meet like this as one big family. Today we want to discuss the topic freedom. I am sure you will learn some things that you never knew before. There's a saying, the more you live, the more you learn. The Bible is crystal clear. It declares who the Son set free is free indeed. We need this freedom. Let's cherish it. This is Choices. God bless you. And God continue to bless beautiful Guyana. Thank you for staying tuned with us. Be blessed.
Thank you, Reverend Singh, and for reminding us about freedom. We want to talk about freedom in the context that today, the 1st of August, we are celebrating as a nation and also different parts of what might be considered or could be considered the former British Empire. That is the emancipation of enslaved Africans, a period of enslavement that lasted just over 400 years. And so today we're celebrating the 188th anniversary of emancipation. And so as we talk about freedom, we want to focus on its importance. We want to focus on some of the positive. And ladies and gentlemen, as I reflect, or as we will reflect, one of the positives, or I can list a few, the positives that happened on the 1st of August, 1838, when over 800,000 persons, enslaved Africans in the British Empire were set free, is that here in Guyana, the freed men and women came off of the plantation, and to the surprise of the planters, they were able to purchase some of the villages that we live now in. For example, Victoria, Buxton, Hopetown, and several others. And so they came off, even though they were enslaved, they came off the plantation with that spirit of entrepreneurship, with thriftiness. The fact also that they embraced or they understood that bodies, but they had a soul and a spirit. And so it focused also on the fact that the church, during several of the Sunday sessions, some of the planters ensure that there was what was called religious freedom, in the sense that the slaves or the enslaved men and women were exposed to religious services. And so freedom in that context brought to bear not only entrepreneurship, not only thriftiness, but also it brought about what we call the village movement, where the now freed men were able to purchase village, to develop agriculture and all of that. And so despite the fact that they were enslaved, there are some positives that came out. You might be smiling and thinking, how can they be positive in such a system that diminish or devalue human beings? But nonetheless, we want to focus on some of the positives. We want to focus on the fact that how these men and women acquitted themselves after 1838 and how it has impacted on the development and growth of Guyana. Ladies and gentlemen.
I'm just asking a question for clarity. Did they actually purchase villages or they purchase land? And one of the contribution of our early founding fathers is that they established in place of the lands that they purchased the village system, what is known as the village system.
You're correct, Bishop. They purchased former plantations or
Yeah.
abandoned plantations, which they subsequently named villages and established the village movement.
And that is a remarkable achievement. And all young men and women should remember that, should know that, should remember that. And your oppression could only last a season. Whatever shape or form it takes, have you heard 400 years of enslavement? 400 years of being stripped of all of the privileges of being who you are? You know, I think it was 2015, I went to Ghana. And in Ghana, they took me many places. I was in awe, eating fufu and the spicy foods. It was fantastic. Then they took me to Elminia Castle. Um, I have never forgotten that experience. That is where Africans were corralled and they were held against their will. They were caught in their villages, they were caught on their way to school, on their way to market. They were caught and paid for on the West Coast. This was done by West Coast of Africa, the people who come here, who are brought here, a very strong connection to West Coast of Africa, Ghana included. And they also had um, slavery on the East Coast of the continent. And that was fueled by Arabs. So they're two different kind of snakes. The system that we are quite familiar with, and it's amazing listening to them speak about their experiences. Nobody wants to go through that Elminia Castle. My return to Ghana is imminent, and I'm going to examine in greater detail that place of no return, place of no, my eyes, all of us, whether we had come from North America, the Caribbean, we had come from French countries, Spanish countries, our eyes were all wet when we looked at the horrors of slavery. Yeah. But you know what? We survived.
Amen. Amen. Thank you so much, Bishop and Bishop Messiah, Dr. Lee, Reverend Singh. Really set the platform for us today as we reflect. And one of the things you mentioned, Bishop Messiah, is that we must never forget where we came from. And this must be known by every young person, every old person. Today, I am proud to say that I am a descendant of I'm a descendant of one of the 83 freed slaves. His name was John Langhorne. And they pooled their resources together to purchase Plantation Northbrook, who was renamed later on the village of Victoria, the first village. And when we think of the coming together, the pooling of the resources, they used to pool their monies together, something we call box hand or susu. or partner or throwing box. These are some of the positives we can glean from. Dr. Lee spoke about looking at the positives that are still relevant today. I throw box and I benefit from that. So indeed, we must always remember where God brought us from, where God is taking us to, and teach our children, teach the younger generation the values of entrepreneurship, of savings. These were inherited by our foreparents.
I like that, Dr.
I
Paul.
want to
I
say,
want to go ahead. I would like to continue building on what you said and what everyone else said. We're speaking about freedom, and as Bishop gave us this topic to discuss on this day, freedom is a responsibility. That's what crossed my mind. Those who are listening, freedom is a responsibility. That's what I'm hearing. Freedom is the ability to choose and act without being forced. It's a responsibility, and it's the ability to choose and act without being forced. Your descendants, Dr. Paul, our descendants on this platform today, they had this responsibility and they chose to act. They built a community that we're benefiting from today. You see, there are different levels of freedom as well. There's freedom from, there's freedom to, and there's freedom in. Varying levels. Freedom from oppression and fear. I think Reverend Singh mentioned fear at the beginning. When once in Christ, once Christ sets us free, we are free indeed. Freedom from oppression, freedom from fear, freedom to live how we are meant to be, how we're meant to live, freedom to choose who we want to be without someone forcing us, freedom to worship, freedom to love, varying kind of freedom to. And then there's freedom in. Freedom in is what I will end with. Freedom in is the deepest kind of freedom that we can have. You see, freedom in comes from inside, deep inside. Freedom in. When you have that kind of peace, that kind of freedom, that you know yourself and you can do what you desire, when you can handle that responsibility in a mature manner. So it's not just about freedom. Yes, we are free. Yes, we can, but it comes with a responsibility. What are you free from? What do you have freedom to do? And what do you have freedom in? When you have freedom inside, it doesn't matter the circumstances. It doesn't matter what's going on or how unfavorable it is. Once you have that freedom inside of you, you can do anything you put your mind to with God's help. You have the ability as well to forgive. Once you have freedom inside of you, you have the ability to forgive those who have wronged you. And that's the kind of freedom we're selling today, and we're reminding you today. Freedom.
it is remarkable that we can have survived 400 years of slavery. For some, they would have thought that we would never be able to bounce back. But I'm grateful to God for His goodness. And though we are nowhere near where we need to be after 180 how many years, I am grateful for several things. The God who has the ability to repair and restore has been working on us. I heard my brother Paul, who has a similar history to mine, speak about the Longhorns from Victoria. I want to add the Lutchmans, the Ainsworths, the Pools, the Asanas, all of which the Jackmans and Jacksons. And there are so many others who ancestry was a part of purchasing that village called Victoria, the very first village. And it is a demonstration of the kind of resilience that we have. And so I would like to honor my ancestors. And I want to challenge us to consistently rid of ourselves of the rudiments of 400 years of slavery. Some will say we haven't done enough, but I would like to think of 400 years of being a captive and now being freed. It takes a while sometimes for washing to take place, but I like my brother Kurt, how God is able to provide that kind of repair and reconciliation. And hence I salute my forefathers for what they have done. And build on their shoulders, stand on their shoulders and build, taking it further than where they left it, so that I will make my mark and would have signed my name that I have done my part for the next generation to continue.
You know, a transaction was done on the 7th of November, 1839, and the transport, this is acquiring the acquisition of Northbrook, that plantation Northbrook. It was finalized on January the 4th, 1841. It cost 30,000 Dutch guilders. And they were locked out of the economic system, that is the former slaves. So they brought their money. I think the owners of Plantation Northbrook were sort of cynical. Where are they going to get this money from? But these folks buried their money. They saved the plantation system, removed them, went to great extents controlling the powers that be, banks and all of those things. They couldn't bank. They couldn't earn even notes, according to the history. So they brought coins with mud. You know, they went to the bank, which was in the backyard or front yard, wherever they had it. And there were 83 of them, you heard. You know, I'm going to strike a blow for women because women were among them. Marie Grant was one, Belinda Hopkinson. Their names were written. It was a rare thing for all of these names to be written on a transport, but these names were written on the transport, including these women, Marie Grant. And I say that with a great degree of reverence. Belinda Hopkinson, Catherine Thumb, Molly Archer, and Hannah Foster. We must add the other names to this.
Yeah.
This speaks to a period where the family was intact in the African community. Now, we don't have a lot of time. We didn't set out to do an expansive thing, but we want to recognize that freedom also came to East Indian people who were brought here under treacherous system of deceit. They were told one thing, and another thing happened. You see, evil has no respect. It doesn't have a face. It looks sometimes fantastic, but it's coming to get you. They were involved in the indentured, they were called indentured laborers, and they were brought here and they suffered. There are those who want us to know or believe that they suffered equally like slaves. You must judge, you know, um, when you get all the facts. Then not only did the landmass didn't just have these two giants of humans, there were also indigenous people in this country, and they suffered. You know, one of the ways they suffered when the Europeans came, they brought with them their diseases, things that they suffered from, like smallpox and measles. History tells us that almost decimated 90% of the indigenous population. And I'm not being with this, trifle with this. And we just have 5 minutes more to go in this program. So I think we, in our inherited system, we inherited a horrible, broken system as a nation. And here we are in the 24th century. Life is like a relay. It's now our turn to run. What do we do? Go back and try to break the Europeans' arm and get reparation from them? Clearly, they're tone deaf. They don't want to hear that because the evidence is there for that justifies the payment of reparation. But you know what? Above the fray of humanity, irrespective of his ethnicity or her ethnicity, there is a God. And God is active in the affairs of mankind. I've been talking long. I would like to come back and give a wrap. So I'm going to give you an opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Thank you, Bishop. Last weekend, I was able to share at a family reunion of the Campbell Nurse family and the Griffiths coming out of Perth Village, Mycone. And a part of that reunion, I was able to hear about the rich history of my family. And I want to encourage those of us listening to ensure that you find out a bit more about the history of your family. You might be surprised about the greatness, the great achievements that exist within your family. And I thank God for family. There's a quote I often hear, team. It says, slavery is not the totality of African history. It is an interruption in African history. There was a before slavery, and there's so much rich history, innovators, kings, leaders, warriors that are from the African race. And so it's important to know where we come from. Bishop, as you talk about moving forward, the acronym RISE comes to mind. R, resilience. Having survived 400 years of slavery, having regard to where we are today, we are a resilient people, and we must continue to be resilient in every area of our lives. I, innovate. Use the mind. We have a lot of inventors in our history, but you and I and Guyanese across the board, we must innovate in this season and not just dwell on the past, but be ready to move forward with innovation. S, strategy. We must have a plan. We must be strategic in how we approach things. And E, economics. It's not just about, being angry about the past, but we must have a system in place to advance economically. And so my call today, as we recognize the freedom, even in this emancipation celebration, is for us to rise as a people. God bless.
And another interesting thing I've noticed is that recently, around emancipation, a lot of people, even persons who you don't think might be wearing African clothes, they're wearing African clothes. And it reminds me of back when I was studying international business, they show you this iceberg. And there are certain values and things that you see of a culture that are at the top. They're easy to understand. And then there's a huge chunk of culture and identity that sits under the water there. And I'd like to say, or I'd like to analyze and say that I think that we've completed phase one, where we're no longer resistant of the artistic elements or the kind of visual cultural elements of our African heritage, and it's also being accepted in a larger way, especially here in Guyana. You could see it at the different festivals, at the different fashion shows and everything. But the next step is to understand the value. Like we're talking about the economic value. We're talking about how family structures work, how dynamics work. Another interesting thing is how the power dynamics work within the African cultures. And it's not just one culture, there are many of them. And the reason there are many of them, well, one of the reasons is because each approach at managing and governing different societies is kind of built off a different set of people, even though they're all a part of this one group. So there are many lessons that we could learn that would impact our things like economics, our faith, even down to our nutrition. So don't just stick at the surface level, which is the beautiful, vibrant, unique cultural elements and art and fashion, but let's have a deeper understanding and connect it to our faith and how we live this Christian life.
Here, the Apostle Paul, as we do a wrap or attempt to wrap, the Apostle Paul said to the Galatians, as I am repeating and saying to all of us, irrespective of your origin on this 188th Emancipation Day in Guyana, you are no longer a slave, but you are a son. And if a son, then an heir through God. Galatians 4:7. Whoever you are, wherever you are, know this fact that above the fray of all the cruelty, above all the fray, there's a God who can deliver. As a matter of fact, he's put in place a system that you're not chattel. No potato is more important than you. You are an heir. And Jesus Christ purchased that freedom. God bless you.
Bless you.
Let's learn how to come together, Guyana. See you next week.
Thank you for joining us on Choices today. Remember, you can join us at First Assembly, LNP Durban Street, Workmanville, Georgetown, Guyana, for any of our special services. I'm Celicia on behalf of the set, reminding you that your whole life is the sum of your choices. God bless you.